Johun turned his head at the sound of Farfalla's voice.
Go,
Sero shouted at him.
I can handle this one.
The young Jedi looked over to the far side of the room and instantly recognized what was happening. Master Warroar was in danger. He had to be protected or his battle meditation and any hope of victory would be lost. He leapt across the room, using the force to propel him through the air, so that he landed only a few meters from where Raskta was dueling Darth Bane, desperately trying to drive him back and away from where Master Warroar stood, but a meter or two behind her. He hesitated before attacking, noticing that the Sith Lord's skin was covered with a strange crustaceous growth.
Go for the face!
Farfalla shouted, arriving on the scene and throwing himself into the battle as Johun did the same. Together, the three of them held the Sith Lord at bay. Farfalla on the left flank, Johun on the right, and Raskta in the center. Between blocks and parries, they cut and stabbed at his face, their combined efforts finally forcing their enemy into a defensive stance. The young Jedi marveled at the speed and savagery of Raskta's blades. And while Johun's own clumsy efforts had actually seemed to impede Sero when they fought side by side, Raskta appeared to thrive off his presence. When he went high, she went low. If he came from the left, she came from the right. It was partly a function of her choice of weapon. Individually, each of her lightsabers was more precise and accurate than Sero's giant double blades. But it was more than that. Her reactions were so fast, her combat instincts so pure, that she was able to sense and anticipate what he was going to do even as it happened, then use his attacks to her own advantage. On her opposite side, Farfalla struck with clean, elegant blows, his form perfect as he harried Bane's right flank. Yet though they were able to hold their ground, they couldn't drive him back or defeat him. They were at an impasse, none of their attacks able to connect with the one vulnerable part of Bane's anatomy. Then Johun caught a glimpse of white flesh peeking out from the seam between the Sith's armored gloves and the strange shells on his forearm. The gap was narrow, but it was large enough for a well-aimed blade to penetrate. He slashed at his new target. Amplified by Warroar's power, the force flowed through him and guided his blade home. The contact wasn't perfect. His lightsaber glanced off the edge of the armored shells so that he only made shallow contact with the skin beneath. Instead of severing the hand, he merely sliced deep enough to sever nerves and tendons. Bane bellowed in rage as his weapon slipped from his grasp, the wound leaving his fingers limp and powerless. But before Johun or any of the others had a chance to finish off their unarmed opponent, they were blown backward by an explosion of dark side energy, their enemy's power fueled by the sharp, sudden pain of his wound. Lying on the ground 10 meters away, Johun watched in helpless horror as the Dark Lord's lightsaber leapt from the floor and flew back into his hand. Amazingly, his fingers wrapped themselves around the hilt and reignited the crimson blade, his injuries somehow healing almost instantly. There was no longer anyone standing between Bane and the Ithorian. Like Johun, Farfalla and Raskta had both been thrown clear. The Sith Lord raised his blade to end Warroar's life, and Johun thrust out with the Force. He knew he wasn't strong enough to penetrate Bane's defenses, but the big man wasn't his target. Instead, the powerful push struck Warroar, throwing him into the corner as the lightsaber strike that would have cut him in two swished harmlessly through the air. Johun felt his strength and energy plummet. A wave of exhaustion and fatigue overwhelmed him, the beneficial effects of the battle meditation vanishing as Warroar's concentration was broken. But the Jedi Master was still alive, and Farfalla and Raskta were back on their feet. If they could hold Bane off for just a few seconds, the Ithorian could resume his meditations and restore their advantage.